Scary telling.
I was attending a political event in a small town in the outskirts of my city. I was just minding my own business, shaking hands and giving speeches when I met a peculiar girl who seemed to be interested in me. Her hair was long and black, covering the sides of her face, but she had a smile that was bright and confident. As I was making my way to the podium to give a speech, I felt the skin on my face begin to blister and burn for the 5th time that evening. The pain was excruciating, and I was starting to worry that something was seriously wrong. Just then, I saw the girl again, this time standing right in front of me. She moved her hair off her shoulders, revealing her own burned scars as she grinned and sweetly crooned, "You're really gonna let yourself be outdone by a little girl?" I was taken aback by her words and the fact that she seemed to know about my burns. I tried to ignore her and focus on my speech, but the pain in my face was getting worse and worse. I finished my speech as quickly as I could and rushed out of the event, desperate to find some relief for my burning skin. As I got into my car, I couldn't help but think about the girl with the burned scars. Who was she, and why did she seem to know so much about me? And most importantly, why did my burns seem to flare up whenever she was around? The questions were burning a hole in my mind as I drove back to my home. Days had passed since the political event, but I couldn't get the image of the girl out of my mind. I had tried to find out more about her, but nobody seemed to know who she was or where she had come from. One day, I received a mysterious invitation in the mail. It was an invitation to a private gathering in a secluded mansion just outside of town. The invitation was anonymous, but I couldn't help but feel drawn to it. When I arrived at the mansion, I was greeted by the same girl from the political event. She was wearing a long black dress and had her hair styled in a sleek updo. Her smile was just as bright as before, but this time it seemed almost sinister. She led me through the mansion, showing me room after room of strange artifacts and oddities. I felt uneasy, but I couldn't bring myself to leave. It was as if she had some sort of hold over me. Eventually, we ended up in a dimly lit room with a large circular table in the center. There were 5 other people seated at the table, all of them dressed in black and wearing masks that covered their faces. The girl took a seat at the table and motioned for me to do the same. As I sat down, I noticed that there was a strange symbol etched into the wood of the table. The girl began to speak, her voice low and hypnotic. She spoke of ancient rituals and dark secrets, and I felt a chill run down my spine. It was then that I realized I had made a grave mistake in coming to this mansion. But it was too late to leave now. The girl explained that the gathering was to perform a ritual that would grant the participants immense power and wealth. But in order to do so, they needed to make a sacrifice. I watched in horror as one of the masked individuals was dragged to the center of the room, struggling and screaming. The girl produced a large knife from her dress and plunged it into the person's chest, spilling blood onto the table. As the others began to chant in an unknown language, I felt a strange sensation wash over me. It was as if the air around me was thick with some sort of energy. Suddenly, I felt a searing pain in my chest, and I realized that the girl had turned her attention to me. She was holding the knife to my chest, her smile wider than ever before. But then, something strange happened. The burned scars on my face began to glow, and I felt a surge of power coursing through me. I grabbed the girl's wrist and pushed her away, causing her to stumble and fall. The other masked individuals were in a frenzy, and I knew that I had to get out of there before they could do anything else. I ran out of the room and through the mansion, dodging obstacles and narrowly avoiding capture. When I finally emerged outside, I collapsed onto the ground, gasping for breath. As I looked up, I saw the girl standing in front of me, her smile still present, but now tinged with something else. "You're different than I thought," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "But don't think you're safe. You'll always be marked by us." With that, she disappeared into the night, leaving me alone and shaken. I knew that I had narrowly escaped something truly sinister, but I also knew that I was forever changed by the experience. In the weeks that followed, I tried to put the events of that night behind me. I went about my life as usual, attending political events and meeting with constituents. But there was always a nagging feeling in the back of my mind, a feeling that I was being watched. One day, I received a package in the mail. Inside was a small black box, and when I opened it, I found a strange symbol etched onto a silver pendant. It was the same symbol that I had seen on the table at the mansion. I knew then that the girl and her associates were still watching me, still marking me as one of their own. But I couldn't bring myself to get rid of the pendant. It was like a dark reminder of what had happened and of the power that I now possessed. As the months went on, I began to notice strange things happening around me. Objects would move on their own, and I would hear whispers in the darkness. I knew that the girl and her associates were still out there, and that they were watching my every move. Then, one night, I woke up to find the girl standing at the foot of my bed. She was grinning, as always, but this time her eyes were black and empty. "You can't escape us," she said, her voice low and menacing. "You're one of us now. Forever." With that, she disappeared into the shadows, leaving me alone and terrified. I knew then that I could never escape the mark that had been placed upon me, and that the girl and her associates would always be watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. At first, it seemed like a strange coincidence. My wife and I were sitting in the living room, watching TV, when she suddenly appeared in the doorway, wearing the same clothes and sporting the same hairstyle as she had been just minutes before. "Hey, weren't you just in here?" I asked, confused. She looked at me blankly, then turned to walk away. I shrugged it off, assuming that I had simply mistaken her for someone else. But then it happened again and again. My wife would appear in the room twice, sometimes even 3 times, always wearing the same clothes and with the same vacant expression on her face. At first, I thought my wife had an evil twin. How else could she enter the room where we were already sitting? But as the days went on, I began to realize that something much more sinister was at play. One day, I came home from work to find my wife sitting in the living room, her face twisted into a wicked grin. But as I looked closer, I realized that it wasn't just my wife sitting there, it was her evil twin, too. The two of them looked identical, down to the last detail. They both had the same wild hair, the same dark eyes, and the same twisted grin on their faces. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine as they both turned to look at me. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice trembling. They both laughed, a high-pitched cackle that sent chills down my spine. It was then that I knew they were both evil, and that I was in serious danger. As the days passed, my wife's evil twin became more and more present in our lives. She would follow us around the house, watching our every move with an unsettling grin on her face. I tried to ignore her, but it was getting harder and harder to do so. One night, I woke up to find the evil twin standing at the foot of our bed, staring at me with her dark eyes. I tried to move, but my body was frozen in place. It was as if she had cast some sort of spell over me. "You should be afraid," she said, her voice cold and menacing. "We have big plans for you." I tried to scream, but my voice was caught in my throat. The evil twin simply laughed and disappeared into the shadows. The next day, I received a mysterious package in the mail. Inside was a note written in a scrawled, barely legible handwriting. "Join us," it said, "or face the consequences." I knew then that the evil twin and her associates were planning something sinister, and that I had to stop them before it was too late. But how? I had no idea where to start. That's when I began to notice strange things happening around me. Objects would move on their own, and I would hear whispers in the darkness. I knew then that the evil twin and her associates were watching my every move, waiting for the right moment to strike. But I refused to give up. I would stop them, no matter what it took. As I continued to investigate the evil twin and her associates, I began to uncover more and more unsettling information. They were part of a cult, a group of individuals who worshipped an ancient deity and believed in the power of darkness. I knew then that I had to put a stop to their plans, no matter the cost. I spent weeks planning, gathering weapons, and formulating a plan of attack. One night, I crept into the cult's hideout, armed and ready for battle. As I made my way through the dark, twisting hallways, I could hear the sounds of chanting and the flickering of candles. I finally arrived at the main chamber, where the evil twin and her associates were gathered around a large, black altar. The air was thick with the stench of incense, and I could feel the power of the ancient deity pulsing through the room. I knew then that it was time for the final showdown. I charged towards the altar, ready to take down the evil twin and her associates once and for all. But they were ready for me. The evil twin produced a sharp blade from her cloak, and her associates closed in around me, chanting in an unknown language. It was a fierce battle, one that lasted for what seemed like hours. But in the end, I emerged victorious. The evil twin and her associates were defeated, and the cult was dismantled. As I stood there, panting and covered in sweat, I couldn't help but wonder what had I just uncovered. And what other dark secrets were hiding in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. This roadside mom and pop breakfast cafe has some of the best milk I've ever tasted. It's rich and creamy, with just the right amount of sweetness. I first stumbled upon the cafe while driving through the countryside, looking for a place to stop and eat. It was a small, quaint little place, with a faded sign out front that read "Breakfast served all day." As I walked inside, I was greeted by the smell of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon. The cafe was cozy and inviting, with red and white checkered tablecloths and a jukebox playing oldies in the corner. I ordered a glass of milk and some pancakes, and was blown away by the taste. I asked the waitress what their secret was, but she just smiled mysteriously and told me it was a family recipe. Over the next few months, I found myself returning to the cafe time and time again. I would try different dishes, but it was always the milk that kept me coming back. It was like nothing else I had ever tasted. One day, as I was sitting at the counter, I overheard the owners, an elderly couple, talking in hushed tones. "I don't know how much longer we can keep this up," the wife said. "It's getting harder and harder to find the ingredients we need." That's when I realized that there was something more going on here than just a simple breakfast cafe. They were hiding something dark and dangerous. And I was determined to find out what it was. Over the next few weeks, I began to investigate the cafe and the couple who owned it. I did some digging and uncovered a dark secret. They were running a small, underground operation that involved sourcing ingredients from less than legal sources. I couldn't believe it. How could a place that seemed so innocent on the surface be hiding something so sinister? And what was in that milk that made it so addictive? One day, I decided to confront the owners. I asked them point blank about their secret operation, and they didn't deny it. Instead, they offered me a deal. "We'll tell you our secret," the husband said. "But in exchange, you have to promise to keep it to yourself." I agreed, and they told me their dark secret: the milk was made with a special ingredient, one that they sourced from a nearby farm. The ingredient was a rare and exotic plant, one that was known for its addictive properties. They showed me the plant, and I couldn't believe my eyes. It was beautiful, with long, thin leaves that shimmered in the light. But I knew that it was dangerous, and that it needed to be stopped. But then the owners made me an offer: if I promised to keep their secret safe, they would give me a small bag of the plant, enough to make my own milk at home. I knew it was wrong, but the temptation was too great. I accepted their offer and left the cafe with the bag of plant. But that was just the beginning. As soon as I began making my own milk, I realized just how addictive it was. I couldn't stop drinking it, couldn't stop craving it. And then, one day, I woke up to find that the plant had taken over my entire yard. It had grown into a thick, tangled mess, and it was spreading out into the surrounding fields. I knew then that I had made a grave mistake, that I had unleashed a dangerous force upon the world. And I knew that there was no going back.